Hey, listen, do you know her mom?
Yes, my aunt is coming. My aunt is a flight attendant. That's my mom.
Decisions and think about how foolish you are. I hope all your nights are filled with regret and loneliness.
It is 5 a.m. in Tamarack, Florida, and the world outside is still dark. Somewhere inside a quiet apartment complex off NW 93rd Avenue, a young woman is about to open her door to a stranger in a wide-brimmed hat, a surgical mask, and gloves. She does not know that this visitor has flown in from New York. She does not know that this moment has been planned for days. Within minutes, her home, the one place she should have been safe, will become a crime scene. Her name was Kayla Hodgson. She was 23 years old, and what happened to her that morning would take more than 3 years, a cross-country investigation, and a Broward County jury to fully bring into the light. Kayla Hodgson was building a life for herself in South Florida. She worked as a bartender and bottle waitress, the kind of job that meant late nights, quick friendships, and a front-row seat to the energy of the city. Those who knew her described a young woman who was independent, social, and still very much at the beginning of adulthood, dating, working, figuring out who she wanted to become. She had recently started seeing a man whose past relationship would, without her ever fully realizing it, place her in danger. That past relationship belonged to a woman named Kayla Thompson. Thompson and Kayla's new boyfriend had a history, and according to prosecutors, Thompson struggled to let it go. She is said to have followed the new relationship closely on social media, watching as her ex moved on with someone else. At some point, Kayla blocked her. For most people, being blocked online is a small, forgettable slight. For Kayla Thompson, prosecutors argued, it became the spark that ignited a plan for murder. In the days before July 13, 2022, Thompson booked a flight from New York to South Florida. Investigators would later reconstruct her movements in painstaking detail, flight records showing her arrival in Florida, cell phone data placing her near Kayla's apartment complex, and surveillance footage capturing a masked figure approaching the building in the earliest hours of the morning. To reach Kayla's door, prosecutors said, Thompson used a fake Uber account, a small but telling detail that would later be presented as evidence of premeditation rather than a spontaneous act of passion. At around 5 o'clock that morning, the two women came face to face. What happened next would become the central, disputed question of the entire case. Prosecutors alleged that Thompson confronted Kayla about dating her ex-boyfriend, and that the confrontation quickly turned violent, ending with Kayla stabbed to death inside her own home. Thompson would later testify that she went to talk to Kayla, woman to woman, and that it was Kayla who escalated the encounter, cutting her with a piece of glass. Thompson claimed she believed she was defending both her own life and the life of her unborn child, and that at some point during the struggle, she blacked out. Whatever occurred in those terrifying moments, the outcome was devastating and irreversible. Kayla suffered multiple stab wounds. Investigators would later say that after the attack, Thompson attempted to clean the scene and changed out of her own bloodied clothing into something belonging to Kayla before leaving the apartment. She did not call for help. Later that day, at around 3 in the afternoon, authorities responded to a report of an unresponsive woman inside the complex. When Broward Sheriff's deputies arrived, they found Kayla Hodgson dead in her home. For the family and friends who had last spoken to her only hours or days before, the news was almost impossible to absorb. A young woman who had been building her life, working her shifts, laughing with friends, was gone, killed in the one place meant to be her refuge. What followed was a methodical, multi-state investigation. Detectives worked to piece together not just what had happened inside that apartment, but who had been there. They pulled surveillance footage from the complex, capturing the image of a disguised figure arriving in the pre-dawn hours. They traced a fake Uber account back to its origin. They examined flight manifests showing recent travel between New York and Florida. They gathered cell phone location data that placed a suspect's device near the scene at the time of the killing. Forensic evidence recovered from inside the apartment, combined with witness interviews and a growing digital trail, began to point investigators toward a single name, Kayla Thompson. On July 25, 2022, less than 2 weeks after Kayla's murder, Broward County authorities secured a warrant for Thompson's arrest on a charge of first-degree murder. But Thompson was 1,500 miles away, back home in New York. It would take another week before law enforcement caught up with her. On August 3, 2022, New York City police arrested Sakina Thompson in the Springfield Gardens neighborhood of Queens. An arrest affidavit would later describe her alleged actions in stark terms, accusing her of acting with a depraved mind and a premeditated intent to cause death. She was extradited to Florida to face trial. More than 3 years passed between Kayla's death and the moment her case finally reached a Broward County courtroom. For the family, that wait was its own kind of ordeal, a slow, grinding uncertainty layered on top of unimaginable grief. When the trial finally began in October 2025, it centered on one core question. Had Sakina Thompson traveled to Florida with the intent to kill, or had she found herself in a violent, unplanned struggle she was simply trying to survive? Prosecutors argued the former, and they built their case around the evidence of planning. They pointed to the flight from New York taken just days before the murder. They pointed to the disguise, the hat, the mask, the gloves, worn not in the heat of an argument, but chosen and put on before Thompson ever knocked on Kayla's door. They pointed to the fake Uber account used to mask her arrival. Assistant State Attorney Tonya Johnson told jurors that being attacked and killed inside the safety of one's own home was a uniquely frightening violation, and that Kayla's killer very nearly got away with it. The defense told a different story. Attorneys for Thompson argued that she had not gone to the apartment intending to hurt anyone, but to speak with Kayla directly about the relationship the two women shared with the same man. They claimed that Kayla struck the first blow, cutting Thompson with a piece of glass, and that Thompson, 2 months pregnant at the time, believed she was fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child. Thompson testified that the encounter became a blur, that she could not recall the exact sequence of the violence that followed, and that she blacked out during the attack. The jury heard 4 hours of closing arguments weighing these two competing narratives, a calculated act of jealousy and premeditation on one side, a claim of self-defense born from panic on the other. In the end, they did not need long to decide. After deliberating for just 1 hour, the jury returned its verdict on October 15, 2025, guilty of first-degree murder. Inside the courtroom, Kayla's family broke down in tears, not of sorrow this time, but of relief. They embraced one another as the verdict was read. Kayla's mother, Kayla Hodgson, later said the outcome brought the family a measure of peace, knowing that justice had finally been served. Other relatives expressed gratitude that the jury had seen the case for what they believed it truly was, and that Kayla's memory had not been overshadowed by claims they felt did not reflect what she deserved. Sentencing came in December 2025. 10 of Kayla's family members and friends stood before the court to speak about who she had been and what her loss had cost them. Their grief was raw, but so was their resolve. One relative directly challenged the defense's account of the night, questioning how Thompson could ask the court to accept a story of a sudden blackout after everything the evidence had shown about her movements, her disguise, and her digital trail. The judge sentenced Sakina Thompson to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She will not walk free again. For Kayla's family, the sentence closed one chapter of an ordeal that had stretched on for more than 3 years, but it did not erase the hole left behind. One cousin said simply that she felt she could finally begin to heal, even as she acknowledged that nothing would ever feel the same, and that the way Kayla died would never truly sit right with those who loved her. It is a sentiment familiar to so many families touched by violence. Justice can validate a loss, but it cannot undo it. Kayla Hodgson's case became, in the words of those who covered it, a story that rattled families in 2 states at once, a reminder of how quickly obsession and jealousy can curdle into something lethal, and how digital life, something as ordinary as being blocked on social media, can become entangled with real-world danger in ways few of us ever anticipate. Investigators leaned on flight manifests, cell tower data, rideshare records, and surveillance footage to reconstruct a crime that had been carefully hidden behind a disguise and a fake account. A case study in how modern forensic and digital evidence can still cut through even a calculated attempt at concealment. In the end, this is a story about a 23-year-old woman who was simply living her life, working, dating, building a future, when someone else's jealousy decided that future should not continue. It is a story about the safety we assume exists behind our own front doors and how fragile that assumption can be. And it is a story about a family who waited more than 3 years for the truth to be recognized in a courtroom, who found, in a single jury verdict, not closure exactly, but something close to it. The acknowledgement that Kayla did not deserve what happened to her and that the person responsible would finally be held to account.